What's up guys? Welcome to AnimeKouhai, an extension of Anime Senpai PH channel. All pieces of information are derived from the light novel. In today's video, we will continue Chapter 1, Volume 8 of the light novel, entitled Reconciliation and Agreement. This video is the 9th part of Chapter 1 in our Tensura spoiler video series. If you haven't watched the previous episodes, feel free to check out the links in the description below. Now, let's get to the video. Rimuru wanted to start with a brainstorm session to see what each side's takes were on this situation. Along those lines, he created a list of issues affecting all of them and passed them to everyone to kick things off. This was just to ensure they were all on the same page. Rimuru didn't want to turn this conference into a blame game, so if they disagreed on how they saw matters, Rimuru wanted it fixed as soon as possible, and so did Hinata. Their respective stances were about what Rimuru figured. To them, of course, the whole story began with Pharmac's invasion of their land. Their view of this hadn't changed. All they did was respond to moves made by the other side. On the church's end, Hinata told them that problems actually began before Pharmac's request to them. Essentially, acknowledging the existence of a nation of monsters went against the teachings of Luminism, a pressing issue that threatened to cast doubt on the faith of its believers. Leaving this unaddressed could trigger internal revolt and weaken the foothold the Western Holy Church had on the region. That's why they had to destroy the monster nation, and that was why they needed a just cause, a good reason to conquer them. Hinata explained that had been the situation when they received the request from Archbishop Rahim, who was in Pharmac at the time. Cardinal Nicolaus had given his approval, and Hinata had no objections to it. And besides, she still wanted to get back at Rimuru. She intended, in other words, to take advantage of Pharmac's greed and seize the opportunity to annihilate them and gain revenge. Rimuru asked Hinata if that had been about Shizu. Hinata confirmed it and said she supposed she'd just been being used though, looking back. She didn't know who was operating behind the scenes, but there were definitely Eastern merchants involved. Rimuru said he knew it. He explained that Clayman had a merchant or two he was particularly close to as well. And given how well-armed Geld and his Orcish army was, Rimuru assumed they were connected to one nation or another. He guessed it was the East then. Rimuru nodded, convinced. Judging by the account books he had Shuna look into, Clayman was dealing in a vast amount of merchandise, mainly goods from the Empire originally crafted in the Dwarven Kingdom. That wasn't suspicious, since the Empire and Kingdom had regular trade with each other, but there were no records at all of the middlemen involved in this. Shuna was thorough in her work, but she couldn't find any of them, even after Rimuru's team asked the assorted officials they took prisoner. Clayman was careful, no doubt drumming it into his force that no evidence should ever be left behind. Rimuru's side found absolutely nothing on the moderate jesters either, the group closely affiliated with Clayman. Still, Rimuru's team could make educated guesses about who was involved. In Clayman's castle, they found a collection of artwork, rare magic items, and other such goods brought in from around the world. The weapons and armor they discovered, however, were chiefly hand-me-downs from the Empire. Clayman's side had teleportation magic, so they could have procured weapons from anywhere they wanted. But they got almost all of it in from the East. That suggested close connections, and while the evidence was circumstantial, it was still persuasive. That and their food supply. Clayman's bases across the land held enormous stashes of fruit, bread, dairy, and luxury goods like alcohol. Being organic, they couldn't be teleported. Physical transport was a must with them. Clayman's domain, the puppet nation of Distav, apparently used slave labor for most of its agricultural output. But not everything Rimuru's team found in these stores was domestically produced. According to Shuna, some of it had to be imported from beyond their borders. The only real candidate for this was the Eastern Empire, adjacent to Distav. Milim's domain, after all, was self-sufficient to the point that she barely even considered international trade. She and the ex-Demon Lord Carolon didn't even have currency to exchange. So Rimuru had his suspicions that Clayman was linked to people from the Eastern Empire. Hinata said that was right, and that they had told her that Rimuru killed Shizu, and he happened to be stationed in Inglesia. And that's why Hinata took the initiative to kill Rimuru. Rimuru told Hinata that she couldn't have picked a worse time either, and that even now, it still pissed him off when he thought about it. Hinata shivered a bit. Arnau and the other paladins looked similarly cowed, but Luminous told Rimuru to stop coercion, calling him upstart brat, because she could feel the Lord's ambition coming from him. As Luminous just pointed out, a bit of his aura was leaking out. Rimuru was pretty good at keeping it perfectly under his control, but he guessed it got kind of loose whenever he was angry. Rimuru apologized and began saying that it's pretty clear an Eastern merchant or merchants was behind this. He asked them if they knew any names. Hinata responded that she knew one, and he'd called himself Dam, but she was sure that's an alias. Rimuru thought it was probably so, but the name didn't really matter. What did matter was narrowing the culprit down to the Empire's merchant class. Rimuru concluded and said that this merchant had been connected to Clayman, and Rimuru was willing to bet that this merchant and his people were the guys who set Pharmacist King Admaris on them too. Hinata confirmed it and said that there's no doubting that, because Rahim had made that much clear enough in their questioning. Rimuru nodded and said that it's clear that Clayman had been controlling Pharmas from behind the curtain, not in a cooperative kind of way either, and it seemed more coercive to him. Benimaru asked if Hinata thought that the Eastern merchants were his boots on the ground. Hinata whispered she supposed that she had just been another cog in the machine. Rimuru could sense her anger, but the question was who drew up the plans. Rimuru stated that based on how these merchants were involved with every step of this, he was sure that this was more than just a convenient business relationship. Clayman was trying to ascend to true Demon Lord level. Pharmas was trying to take their land for its own expansionist purposes, and someone they didn't know who was engineering it all. Luminous asked Rimuru if this someone was the one Clayman mentioned. Rimuru nodded at Luminous. The humans asked him what he meant. Benimaru and the others already knew about this, but the humans in the room didn't. Rimuru realized this and gave them a quick recap. He said that it looked like Clayman had been doing the bidding of someone else himself. Luminous agreed and added that Clayman had refused to divulge this someone's identity until the very end, and that it was impressive for someone as small-minded as him. Rimuru asked if this someone could be the 7 days then. The idea came to Rimuru suddenly, and when he gave it voice, it felt even more plausible. But Luminous shot him a dirty look and asked Rimuru if he was accusing the 7 days of taking action without her knowledge. Luminous might have wiped them off the planet by her own hand, but Rimuru guessed she didn't like people second-guessing her stuff. That was fair. Rimuru was about to apologize when her associate Louie spoke up and said that he couldn't fully deny that possibility. Luminous asked Louie why he was spouting that nonsense. Her ire had turned on Louie, though he appeared unbothered. Louie politely asked Luminous to listen to him, that the 7 days clergy had craved her affection, and he was sure that she had sensed that. Luminous asked him what he meant by that. Louie explained that he was talking about the love energy, the energizing kiss Luminous gave in a special ceremony. The last time she did that for them was over 100 years ago. At one point, it was a weekly rite, but the intervals between them grew longer and longer over time. Louie asked her if she had noticed that. Luminous gave Louie an unpleasant look, but she remembered it and said that her eternal youth tended to make her forget. She stressed that they were all human, and without her energy, they might not die, but they would certainly grow old. Louie said that was right, and that was why they had worked so fervently to ensure that no other favorites besides them ever appeared. As Louie frankly put it, the 7 days were once a very special presence in Luminous's life. But as humans, they couldn't live forever. This love energy right must have been how they overcame that. Louie continued that he subsequently imagined that they must have tried to curry favor with Luminous. It wouldn't be strange at all to imagine the 7 days working with the Eastern merchants to secretly entice Clayman into action. They weren't about to let Clayman get a leg up on them, especially Gran, the Sunday priest. It was just a passing thought, but it kind of surprised Rimuru how well these puzzle pieces fit together. It was scary stuff, and Rimuru was shocked at the sheer well of knowledge flowing out from him. Raphael sounded like it wanted to say something, but Rimuru was sure he was just imagining things. Maybe it was just envious of his genius, or maybe it thought Rimuru had stolen its thunder because he didn't ask any questions of it. That's it for this video, guys. If you haven't subscribed yet, please subscribe and click the bell notification icon so you will never miss the upcoming continuation of Tensura spoiler video series. Thank you for always watching my videos and supporting my channel. Shout out to the top 10 commenters on my previous video. Shout out to Arizona, Lakshai Sharma, No One, Assassin 139, Kevston Johnson, Michael, Mr. Thapa, Riri Tokisaki, Scratch Good 3, Yusef BTR, Abhishek Dungdung, Sarang Patankar, Tiju John, Grapex, Artistry Mind Studios, and last but not the least, shout out to Calm and Cool Relaxation Music. I'll see you guys in the next video.